This week on 2024 Campaign Trail, a look at the Biden campaign in Wisconsin and a new app used to reach younger voters. And from the Nixon Library in California, highlights of a foreign policy address from independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Also, a stop in North Carolina with Vice President Harris as she talked with voters about economic opportunities. Plus, insight from Nevada, independent founder John Ralston on this year's U.S. Senate race in the Silver State. But first, former President Trump was on Capitol Hill meeting with House and Senate Republicans, part of a packed schedule in the nation's capital on Thursday.
Well, thank you very much. This was a great meeting. There's tremendous unity in the Republican Party. We want to see borders. We want to see strong military. We want to see money not wasted all over the world. We don't want to see Russian ships right off the coast of Florida, which is what they are right now. That's unthinkable. We want to see just success for our country. And we don't have success right now. We have inflation that's killing everybody. We have levels of inflation that nobody's seen for, they say 42 years, they say 53 years, and they say 75 years. I would say probably all of them are wrong. Probably we've never seen levels like this before. And we're going to end that. We're going to bring back our jobs. We're going to bring back common sense to government. We're going to have strong borders, and we're going to have people come into our country, but they're going to come in legally. They're not going to pour in from prisons all over South America and all over the world. And it's not just South America, by the way. It's all over the world. And we're not going to have them pour in from mental institutions, which is where they're coming from, large numbers, and large numbers are terrorists, and we're not going to have this. So what's happening to our country is of great concern to the group of people standing alongside of me. And I just wanted to say that we have great unity. We have great common sense. A lot of very smart people in this room and a lot of people that love our country. They love our country beyond just about all else. And the only thing that maybe supersedes it is their family and maybe their faith in certain instances, and that's very nice. But they want this country to be great again, and we're going to make it great again. And so I just want to thank the Republican Senate, and I want to thank also the House. We met, as you know, with the full House, Republican House today, and we had a tremendous meeting with them also, and there's great unity. Very similar, different topics actually, but not that different. And there's one thing in common. We want to make America great again. We want to make our country great again. We're a nation that's in decline. We're a declining nation. We're a nation that is being laughed at all over the world. We have a leader that's being laughed at all over the world. And we're going to turn it around. We're going to turn it around fast. The polls are looking like they're very strongly for us. And no matter where you look, in fact, a lot of states that people thought weren't in play are very strongly in play. Some were actually leading in. But we have to get elected. We have to take this beautiful place, and we have to make it really something very special again. Right now, it's not special. Right now, it's being scorned and being used as an example of when they look at the crime on the streets, when they look at all of the problems that we have, they're using us as a bad example of democracy. And they're getting away with murder, and we're not going to let it happen. So I just want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank everybody here. You're all either elected or you're going to be elected again and reelected, and I'm with every one of you, and you know that. I'll be with you always. And thank you very much for inviting me, and we're going to have great success. I think we're going to have a tremendous election. It's November 5th is very important, but we really start much earlier than that. You have North Carolina. As an example, you have North Carolina September 6th. You have Pennsylvania starts on September 22nd. These are things different from the old days. We had Election Day, and you had paper ballots, and you had voter ID. Unfortunately, maybe someday we'll get back to that, but you don't have that right now. But this is an outstanding group of people. I'm with them 1,000%. They're with me 1,000%. We agree just about on everything, and if there isn't, we work it out. And I've had a really great relationship with just about everybody here, and just about all of the senators. And if it wasn't fantastic, it gets worked out. And we have one thing in mind, and that's making our country great. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Next, some of Vice President Harris's visit to Charlotte, North Carolina, where she talked to voters about the Biden administration's efforts to boost economic opportunity for families.
You've traveled across the country and met voters and met students in particular where they were, and meeting people where they are. And you've led the fight for reproductive rights. You've challenged and talked about ending gun violence. And now you're on this economic opportunity tour. I think the first question we have to ask is, why this tour? Why now?
Why this tour? Well, most importantly, it's because I feel very strongly that we need to be in the community, listening, and giving people information about the work that we have done that will help folks. Because I'm very aware that, we can do all this good stuff in Washington, D.C., but if it doesn't hit the streets, it doesn't matter. So I'm on this tour to travel our country and describe what we have done with the full intention that the opinion leaders, the civic leaders, the community leaders that are here will help us get the word out. I believe very strongly that the accomplishments of our administration, such as creating 15 million new jobs, creating over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, historic low unemployment, in particular for the Black community, are very important, critically important. And that is not to the exclusion of also understanding we have extraordinary capacity and leaders in the community who have incredible ideas, who are entrepreneurial, who are ambitious, who have aspirations that, yes, are about making sure that everyone is employed, but also the creation of wealth. To aspire to create wealth is a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
What advice would you give this room full of the leaders of right now, not future leaders, but these young people who are the leaders of this moment that we're in?
The first piece of advice I have is dream with ambition. And never apologize for your ambition. Never apologize for that. It is a good thing to have ambition. I will also say this. I eat no for breakfast. I don't hear no. And many times in your life, you're going to hear no. Someone is going to, maybe even many people say to you, oh, it's not your time. Oh, nobody like you has done that before. Oh, they're not ready for you. Oh, and then I love this next one. Oh, that's going to be hard work. Really?
Next, we're in Yorba Linda, California, home of the Nixon Presidential Library and the Nixon Foundation. That's where independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gave an address on foreign policy, which the Los Angeles Times reported included a call to cut the national defense budget by half.
August 9th will mark the 15th anniversary of President Nixon's resignation from office. And although Watergate overshadowed his presidential achievements in the public mind to a large extent, there's at least one thing which we remember him for, and rightly so, in a very, very positive light. President Nixon's visit to China in February of 1972 was a major milestone in the history of the Cold War. A cynic might say that it was a strategic maneuver to drive a wedge between China and the Soviet Union, and perhaps to some extent it was, but it was much, much more than that. It's a relevant topic because today we're again facing rising tensions between the world's most powerful powers, Russia, the Soviet Union, Russia, China, and the United States. The threat of nuclear war is greater than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Maybe there's something important today that we can learn from President Nixon's approach 50 years ago. Besides opening unofficial diplomatic relationships with China, we also remember Richard Nixon with admiration for initiating détente with the Soviet Union. As you all know, President Nixon was no shrinking violet when it came to communism. He was a hardline red baiter. You see, the true foundation of America's greatness is not just our natural resources or a large population. It's our national character, our free markets, and our Constitution. These are assets that will allow us to excel in the multipolar age. In a country like China, the success of an enterprise depends not on making great products or running an efficient business, but on political influence. That might allow it to dominate Chinese markets, but it becomes weak abroad, requiring constant government assistance. But in a free economy, only the most efficient and innovative companies can survive. Unfortunately, our country has become more and more like China as corporations have captured Congress and the regulatory agencies. They've written the regulations to favor themselves and to punish the innovation class, the small businesses, to put them at disadvantage. We have to have confidence in who we are as a people. This is a noble experiment that we're all involved in. And it's an experiment in self-governance, which means freedom. And we're supposed to be modeling these virtues for everybody else in the world. We have to have confidence that by modeling those virtues, they're going to work for us and they're going to create the kind of country, the template for freedom that is not only going to enrich the world, but also going to inspire it. And that's our role in history, and that's the role that I will pursue as President of the United States. Thank you all very much.
And given that our country has suffered an influx of over 10 million trespassers coming in, we have elections coming up in the national, state, and local areas. What do you feel about voter ID?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do on day one when I get into office is I'm going to order the State Department and the Post Office to issue passport cards to every American who says they can't afford them. Right now, there are tens of millions of Americans who don't have any government-issued photo ID. I've consulted, our team has consulted with Andrew Young, with Reverend Al Sharpton, and with other top civil rights leaders who have all agreed that if I issue this order and those IDs become available to every American, they will withdraw their objections to IDs at the voting booth. And that will reduce this terrible tension because the Democratic and Republican Party will both support IDs at voting booths, which of course we need. We need Americans to believe in the system.
Next, we're in Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin, where we spoke with staff of the combined campaign working to re-elect President Biden as well as other Democrats in the state. First, Wisconsin campaign director Garen Randolph on what it will take to win a state President Biden won by less than 1% in 2020.
I think that we're expecting to be very close again, and that's why we're out working early. This is something that isn't starting now. This is a campaign that began when we won in 2020. We've been running our year-round organizing programs, our year-round coalitions programs. This is not something that's dropping in to try to win an election this cycle. This is a program that we've been building now for 4 years, and that's what we're seeing the result of that. So I think that the strategy here is to keep building on that, continue to work on what we've already built, but to really continue to grow what we've done so far. That way we can scale up before November.
So you manage a campaign in a state that has cities and a lot of rural territory. What's the footprint?
Yeah, I think that's the important piece is that the state is not just Milwaukee or just Madison. Like there's a lot of rural areas across the state. It's a big state, and that's why we've built the campaign we have. We've got 47 offices across the state right now, where people in all corners of the state. We've got staff everywhere. Our staff is now over 100 people, which is way bigger than it's ever been before, but also we're 5 months out, and we're going to keep growing. And I think the cool thing about the 100 is, the majority of them are organizers. The majority of them are people that are out talking to voters every day, that are in these areas that you're talking about, that are actually in communities. They're not here at HQ with us. They're out in county party offices. They're in campaign offices across the state, directly working with volunteers. That's how we've been able to build the large infrastructure with over 6,000 volunteers across the state. So we've got people at it every weekend, every day, nights that we're going to go through November.
And what does that work look like on the ground? What are these folks doing?
Yeah, a lot of it is the traditional stuff that you know before, knocking on doors, making phone calls. But we're also really incorporating relational organizing this time around, which is, our way of making sure that we're getting voters that you don't typically find on doors or in phone calls, right? That's, having people reach out to their friends and family via text message, or using our app to send different pictures or memes to different people. We're seeing this work a lot on campuses as well. We ran a pilot program. We were one of a couple states to do that really focused on Black voters, Latino voters, and voters on campuses. And we saw, great success from that. What we were able to do with that app was really get new people in the fold. I think the cool piece of that was the new volunteers that we got, or the volunteers that we recruited, were all people that have never volunteered with us before. So I think what we're finding is, while we're still going to do the traditional door knocking and phone calls, our campaign has made over 1 million voter contacts since Joe Biden announced his re-election last year. So we've been at it, and we're still 5 months out. But we're also really finding people on social media. We're finding people where they are on their computers. We're finding people on their phones, texting them, and making sure that people are, reaching out to their friends and family. And it's not just the same typical campaign staff. It's actually our volunteers and our supporters doing it themselves.
So tell us more about the development of the app. What exactly does it do, and how does it help the campaign?
Sure. So it's called Reach. It's an app that we use. Basically, our team can feed content into it. And then when people sign up and download the app, they're able to share it to their friends and family. So, if there's something big that happens, we can put in a graphic or a quote or something from the president. Then all of our volunteers and supporters that have downloaded the app can then send that immediately, just from their phone, quickly to their friends, their family. And we also make sure it's a way that we kind of have an online community where we can talk to our supporters and give them talking points to, share with their communities. So.
And how important is reaching out directly to voters as opposed to going through traditional media compared to previous campaigns? I
think it's very important. I think that both are still important. I don't want to take away, the emphasis from how important it is, the doors and the phones and all of that. But, it is, the world's changing, right? Like, people are on their computers more, people are on their phones more. People live in apartment buildings that sometimes it's hard to knock on doors, right? I think that on campuses it's not as easy to knock on doors, right? I think that there's people that, traditionally in the past that we've been unable to talk to, or we haven't been able to reach on their phone, or haven't been able to reach at their door, and now we're right there. And I think that speaks to what I was saying about getting new people in the fold and new volunteers, because this is, just opening up an avenue of a whole new group of people that we're talking to for the first time.
What issues are you seeing resonate with Wisconsin voters this cycle?
Yeah, I think that it's, it's lowering costs for working families. It's creating good paying jobs. It's healthcare. It's ensuring that we protect reproductive rights. I think you're seeing that over and over again in elections here. But it's really kitchen table issues, right? We're going to voters and making sure that they know that the Biden administration is making their lives better and is working every day to make lives better for regular Wisconsinites. And that's what you're voting against, right? You have the vision of Joe Biden that's been working every day to make Wisconsinites' lives better, or the chaos that we've seen during the Trump presidency. And we're making sure that voters see that contrast, and voters know and remember what it was like to have Donald Trump president, and know that Joe Biden has been working for them for the last 4 years. And that's why we're confident that when we reach voters, that they're going to be willing to give Joe Biden another term. One last question.
You're an experienced campaign manager. How has it become easier and more difficult to reach voters?
Sure. I think to what I said earlier, it always changes, right? We are using new apps every cycle and figuring out ways. 2020 was different, right? We didn't knock on any doors in 2020. We had a pandemic, so we had to really be creative. We were using a lot of Zoom. We were using a lot of text messages, things like that. So I think that it's changed in that way. I think that we were able to go back to a lot of what we were doing previously, but also add the new stuff that we've learned. So we're just reaching a whole larger group of voters. And I think that that's what you've seen from us, is why we've been building out such a large infrastructure, so we can do all the things, right? So we're not just excelling at one thing or the other, that we're able to do everything. And I think that's our competitive advantage. what we've been able to build over the last 4 years since 2020 and learn from what happened in 2020. Like, Republicans don't have an infrastructure like that here in Wisconsin. They're not doing this work to talk to voters. They don't have an app that reaching out to people. They aren't actually in communities knocking on doors yet. And the advantage that we have is that we're, as voters start to tune into this race, they've already heard from us 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And we go into that, when we go into this fall, that's really going to make a difference.
Next, more on the Biden campaign's efforts with the Reach app from Kelly Connor.
Spent a lot of time on campus reaching out to the youth voters, explaining how important it is to get out the vote. We know that Biden won 2020 in large part due to the young voters, so reaching out to them and making sure they know the importance about the 2024 election is something I spend most of my time doing.
And a focus on younger voters means you have to take a little bit of a different tack than what we've seen in previous cycles. You're not phone banking, you're not door knocking. How are you reaching these folks?
Actually, an app called Reach. So it's pretty simple. You download Reach on the App Store. There's a bunch of different content that you can share with your friends and family members. This is a share bank, so we're doing a bowling activity, but also having people who come to this event download the app and share memes, important stories about what the Republicans are doing, what Democrats are doing, and kind of showing the comparison between the two. You can also, when you're talking to voters like on State Street or in person, you can ask, can I get your name? Can I ask you a few questions to see where you're at politically, whether you're supporting our candidates, what the most important issues are facing the country. So you just basically ask them their name, you get it, you confirm that it's them, and ask them, are you supporting President Biden and Kamala Harris in the upcoming election? Are you supporting Tammy Baldwin in the upcoming election? And then the most important thing for us is to ask what the most important issue is facing the country. And a lot of times I'll give them my phone and they can kind of check off as many options as they want. Reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, climate change, those are all probably like the main 3 biggest issues for young voters. So it's very important to, once we know how they're voting, we can either ease off because they're voting for President Biden, or if they're unsure, because there's a lot of times it's like we're undecided. Those are the voters we want to target come November and September before the election.
And how has this app made it easier to reach these voters? Are you finding these are voters that typically you wouldn't have been able to reach?
100%. A lot of the voters, we have about 13,000, I think, in Madison that we are unsure of whether they're voting for President Biden or the alternative. So it's very important to reach out to these people to make sure that we know where they are right now and who we need to target in the future. If they're people that are disengaged with politics and they don't really care, those are the people that we really want to target, because we know that every single vote in Wisconsin counts, especially the youth vote.
So we're in the student union at the University of Wisconsin in Madison right now. That's obviously a big part of your job. What any other specific colleges or groups that you're reaching out to?
Yeah, so we have Madison Technical College. We've actually started up a College Dem chapter, and there's going to be a few. The vice chair and the chair will be here today, which is exciting. They hadn't had a Democratic organization, so we just got that started more toward the fall when students get back from summer. But we're really excited about that. We've been reaching out to the high school Democrats as well throughout Madison. Some of the organizations, they have amazingly talented students that are wanting to get involved, and a lot of them live in Madison, so it's easy to connect with them over the summer. And then I reached out to Edwards College as well to hopefully get something started with their organization to, kind of piggyback ideas off of each other and to make sure that we're collaborating and getting out the youth vote as much as possible.
President Biden's margin in this state was relatively slim in 2020. How critical is the youth vote in Wisconsin for him?
It's huge. If Biden wins Wisconsin, I feel like he has a very good shot at winning in 2024. There were a lot of people that voted uninstructed in the primary to send a message. But a lot of the people that I talked to said they were going to vote uninstructed in the primary, but were adamant about voting for Biden in November because of the alternative is Donald Trump, and he's already said what he would do if he were president. So they're aware of the stakes for the 2024 election, and they know that Biden would do a lot better job in office as opposed to Trump, specifically with the Palestine and Gaza issue.
Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen is considered one of the more endangered incumbents in this year's election. Here to talk about the race to potentially unseat her is John Ralston. He's a longtime Nevada political observer and analyst and the founder of the Nevada Independent. John, we now have a Republican nominee in this race. Who is he, and who's behind him?
Sam Brown was supported by the National Republicans in this race. They were nervous because there were a couple of Trump friendly guys running against him. One was his ambassador to Iceland, and another guy had been a longtime supporter of Trump. But in the end, Sam Brown won easily. He's going to end up with about 60% of the vote. He hasn't been in Nevada that long, only about 6 years or so. He came from Texas. He has never won a race. And it shows the kind of slim pickings that the Republicans have here in Nevada, because it has been such a strongly Democratic state for so long that they had to choose the guy who lost in the primary for the U.S. Senate last cycle to Adam Laxalt, the eventual nominee. But Sam Brown has been embraced by the Republican establishment, both here and in Washington, D.C., and he's going to have plenty of resources to run against Jackie Rosen in a purple state.
So can you compare and contrast these candidates? What are they like on the campaign trail, and what issues are they focusing on?
So Sam Brown has run before. As I said, he's never won a race either in Texas or in Nevada, but he has gotten better and better, I think, on the campaign trail. I mean, he is not a dynamo like a Barack Obama or a Ronald Reagan, but he's very comfortable with himself and good at deflecting questions, and he's had to do that a lot so far. Jackie Rosen, is kind of an accidental politician. She was plucked out of obscurity by Harry Reid in 2018 when he was trying to find somebody to run for an open congressional seat. She agreed, she won, and then just 2 years later ran for the U.S. Senate. I should say that was in 2016. Then in 2018, she ran for the U.S. Senate and won as well. She is not known as a show horse. She works a lot like her colleague Catherine Cortez Masto behind the scenes. She's not known as a very dynamic personality, but she does care passionately about certain issues she's taken a higher profile on, especially the war in Israel. She's Jewish, the former head of a synagogue here in Las Vegas, and so she's very out front on an issue like that.
And are there already some ads out in the race?
There are. Jackie Rosen started putting ads up against Sam Brown late in the primary when they realized that their dreams of a lesser candidate were not going to be fulfilled. Jackie Rosen is going to use the abortion issue, the Dobbs decision, a lot in this race, just as Catherine Cortez Masto did in 2022. Nevada is a heavily pro-choice state. Recent polling comports with what happened prior decades when about 2/3 of people identify as pro-choice. Sam Brown has also had his position evolve since he first ran, when he was very, very conservative on that issue. But now he is essentially adopting the people of Nevada have spoken, because the Nevadans passed a referendum in 1990 to cement the pro-choice statute in stone, can only be changed by a vote of the people. But Jackie Rosen already has Sam Brown's quotes from Texas when he was very conservative. She's putting that up on TV as if again, I'm using the charitable word, evolution occurred.
And give us an idea of the money game in this race. One, will it be expensive? And two, is this going to be money from just inside Nevada, or is it going to be from across the country, as we're seeing in a number of Senate races this year?
And the world has changed a lot in federal races, especially Senate races. Jackie Rosen has raised much more money than Sam Brown ever will. But the outside money from national Republicans, from so-called C3s and C4 nonprofit groups that are actually partisan players, they're going to be tens of millions of dollars spent in Nevada. And we're a cheap date. Because there essentially is Las Vegas and Reno and nowhere else. Now, you can get into rural Nevada by buying some Salt Lake City TV, but there won't be that much of that. And there will be a lot of money spent on this race because it's a critical, pivotal race for both sides. The Republicans consider this outside of the Trump red state races to be their number one target in what is technically a blue state, because Democrats have won the presidential race here since 2008, but is really a purple state right now.
And one last question, how does that, the top of the ticket race, how do you see that impacting the Senate race in Nevada?
Been a lot of public polling that has shown Donald Trump ahead and Jackie Rosen ahead in Nevada. And Senate Democratic candidates are generally running ahead of Biden in most states. I take polling with a grain of salt in Nevada in general. It's not been that great, especially this far out from an election. But Jackie Rosen, I think, is concerned that Joe Biden's numbers are not good here, and that as Joe Biden goes, so goes Jackie Rosen up to a point. If Biden wins the state by 2.5 points, which is what happened last presidential cycle, I don't think he will hurt her. Whether he'll help her or not is another question. But if Trump were to win the state by 4 or 5 points, I think Jackie Rosen would be worried. And you can be sure that almost every ad that the Republicans run will be more about Joe Biden than Jackie Rosen, or morphing the two together.
John Ralston, founder of the Nevada Independent, thank you so much for your time and insight. Really appreciate it.
Next, the latest ads in Nevada's U.S. Senate race, where the incumbent Democrat Jackie Rosen is heading into the general election with a significant but still early polling lead.
I was excited to learn that I was going to have a boy and that my daughters will have a baby brother. But I got devastating news. My son's brain was separated from the spinal cord. The doctor said, "I'm really, really sorry." Ultimately, the baby would not survive. The best thing that I could do for my family was to terminate the pregnancy. And even though I was terminating because of a fetal anomaly, because of the law Sam Brown pushed for, I had to leave Texas to get the care I needed. Now I live in Nevada, and I cannot watch Sam Brown take away our rights here too. Sam Brown, you have no idea what I went through, and you have no right to tell a woman what to do with her body.
I'm Jackie Rosen, and I approve this message.
Biden and Democrats' open border is flooding our communities with drugs and crime. Their reckless policies have led to skyrocketing prices and Nevada having one of the highest unemployment rates in the country.
As a veteran, I'll never compromise America's security. I'll finish Trump's wall and stop the invasion at the border. As a small business owner, I'll lower prices and make Trump's tax cuts permanent. I'm Sam Brown, and I approve this message.
A reminder, this program and all of C-SPAN's campaign 2024 coverage can be found online at cspan.org/campaign.